The sun dipped below the horizon on the frontier colony of New Haven, casting long shadows across the tarmac of the spaceport. Captain Elias Ford stood at the edge, watching cargo ships rumble in from distant systems, their hulls scuffed by micrometeoroids. Retired from the Galactic Navy, Elias had found a semblance of peace in this remote outpost. He now ran a small engineering shop fixing old machinery, a far cry from his days commanding battleships. Elias's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of running feet. A young boy, breathless and wide-eyed, came to a halt in front of him. "Captain Ford, you need to come quick. It's Leah. Something terrible has happened." Heart sinking, Elias followed the boy, jogging through the dimly lit streets of the colony. Leah was like a granddaughter to him, a bright young girl who often played in the hangar as Elias worked. The tight-knit community meant any tragedy was felt by all, and Elias braced himself for the worst. They arrived at the central square to find a crowd gathered, murmuring in hushed, angry tones. In the middle, beneath the flickering light of the public vid screens, lay Leah. Her small body was still, her vibrant spirit extinguished. The doctor, Mara, stood up as Elias approached, her face somber and pale under the artificial lights. "It was the Empire's patrol," she said softly. "They were roughing up Miller at his stall, and she just wanted to help." Elias felt a cold fury rising within him. The Galactic Empire had always treated the outer colonies harshly, but now their brutality had stolen away innocent Leah. He looked around at the faces of his neighbors, seeing his own pain reflected back at him. "We can't let them get away with this," Elias said, his voice carrying across the crowd. Murmurs of agreement grew into shouts of assent. The colony had been pushed to the brink, and Leah's death was a catalyst that could no longer be ignored. That night, Elias met with the other leaders of New Haven. They gathered in his shop, amongst the smell of oil and metal, a war council of unlikely rebels. "We have tolerated the Empire's dominance for too long," Elias declared, slamming his fist onto the metal table. "We need to fight back, but we'll need help. I have a plan, a risky one, but it's our only chance to stand up against the Empire." He explained about the ancient fleet, hidden away in an asteroid belt not far from their sector. Myths of the fleet had circulated for generations, dismissed by most as just stories. But Elias had seen enough in his naval days to believe, if they could reactivate the ships, they could have a real shot at resistance. The group was skeptical, but the fire of rebellion had been lit. With each nod of agreement, Elias's resolve strengthened. They would either find the fleet and fight, or die trying. For Leah, for New Haven, for their very right to exist in a galaxy that had forsaken them. As the meeting disbanded, plans were set into motion. They would need to be swift, careful, and above all, silent. The Empire was always watching, but they hadn't yet crushed the spirit of humanity on the fringes of its vast dominion. The early hours of morning found Elias poring over ancient star maps and faded schematics in his cramped office, the only illumination coming from the glow of his data terminal. He traced routes to the asteroid belt with his finger, calculating fuel requirements and potential hazards. Every now and then, he paused, glancing at a hologram of Leah that flickered on his desk, her smile frozen in time, a stark reminder of why he was undertaking this perilous mission. By mid-morning, word had spread about Elias's plan. Although the initial shock of Leah's death had settled, it had been replaced by a simmering rage among the colonists, an urgent need for action that Elias was determined to direct. He walked to the local assembly hall, where a meeting had been called to discuss the next steps. As he entered, a hush fell over the room filled with neighbors, friends, and fellow resistors, all united by a common grief and a burgeoning resolve. "Friends," Elias began, his voice steady despite the weight of his message. "Last night's tragedy was not just an attack on one of our own. It was an act of war against all of us. The Empire believes they can strike us down with impunity. We're here to show them they're wrong." Heads nodded, faces set in grim determination. "I've told you about the ancient fleet," he continued, addressing the murmurs of skepticism. "I believe it's our best shot. It's hidden, but with your help, we can find it and bring it to life once more. We need a crew, brave souls willing to venture into the unknown, to navigate treacherous space and reclaim what is rightfully ours." The assembly buzzed with whispered discussions. Elias watched as old friends exchanged glances. Younger members stood up, energized by the prospect of defiance. Slowly, volunteers came forward, each one stepping up to stand beside him. Among them was Tara, a skilled pilot whose brother had been lost to an Empire labor camp years ago. "I'll fly the lead ship," she declared, her voice cutting through the murmurs like a laser. The determination in her eyes sparked further courage among the group. With the crew assembling, the next challenge was gathering the necessary resources. Fuel, food, medical supplies, all would need to be sourced discreetly to avoid Imperial attention. The community rallied, contributing what they could from hidden caches and secret hoards that had been kept in reserve for times of dire need. As the meeting drew to a close, Elias felt the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders. "This won't be easy," he admitted, looking around at the faces filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. "We're not just fighting for revenge. We're fighting for our freedom, for our future. Leah's memory will guide us as we make our stand." The colonists dispersed, each tasked with preparations, their movements now purposeful. Elias stayed behind, collecting his thoughts and the myriad data pads strewn about. As the hall emptied, he felt a solitary moment of peace amidst the storm of upcoming challenges. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, possibly even betrayal, but the fire in his heart, a fire kindled by an empire's cruelty and a girl's untimely death, burned too fiercely to be extinguished. By the time Elias left the assembly hall, New Haven was no longer just a remote colony under the thumb of the Galactic Empire. It was the burgeoning heart of a rebellion, pulsing with the lifeblood of those who dared to dream of freedom. The course was set, the die cast, and the shadows of the evening seemed a bit less oppressive, as if anticipating the dawn of something new, something bold. The mission to find the ancient fleet was set to launch under the cloak of the new moon, when the dim light would provide minimal visibility to any prying sensors of the Empire. The chosen crew gathered at the edge of the spaceport, their faces etched with resolve under the starlit sky. Elias stood before them, reviewing the final checklist. Each member was clad in a patched suit, remnants of better days, now symbols of their makeshift readiness. "All right, team," Elias addressed them, his voice low and steady. "This journey will take us through the asteroid belt known as Kuiper's Cluster. It's a treacherous route, filled with debris and electromagnetic anomalies, but it's also the best hiding place for a fleet, if the legends are true." Murmurs of assent echoed back at him, each nod a reaffirmation of their commitment. Tara, as the lead pilot, fired up the engines of their aging but dependable craft, the Star Warden. The ship had been retrofitted for stealth, its hull matte black and its systems overhauled to emit minimal energy signatures. Elias took one last look at the familiar grounds of New Haven before boarding, feeling the weight of every gaze that followed them into the darkness. As the Star Warden lifted off and set course for Kuiper's Cluster, Elias briefed his crew on the specifics. "Once we reach the belt, we'll need to deploy probes and scan for any energy signatures that match the ancient tech we're looking for. Our biggest challenge won't just be finding the fleet, it'll be getting it operational." The journey through space was tense, each crew member lost in their own thoughts, the silence punctuated only by the hum of the engines and the occasional blip of the navigation console. Hours turned into days as the Star Warden navigated through asteroid fields, the vastness of space a constant reminder of their isolation. Upon reaching the outskirts of Kuiper's Cluster, the real work began. Tara skillfully maneuvered the ship between massive asteroids, her hands steady despite the high stakes. Probes were launched, fanning out across the cluster, sending back data to be analyzed. Then, amidst the countless readings of rock and ice, a probe pinged an anomaly, an energy signature that didn't belong to natural space debris. "There!" shouted Jonas, the technician, pointing at the screen where a faint outline of something man-made appeared. The crew leaned in, hearts racing as the image sharpened. It was a ship, an ancient cruiser, its design unlike anything seen in modern fleets. Elias felt a surge of excitement mixed with relief. "There's one. There might be more. Keep scanning," he ordered, his eyes never leaving the screens. The next hours were a blur as more signatures were detected, an entire fleet hidden among the asteroids, just as the legends had described. With the fleet located, the next phase was boarding and assessment. The Star Warden docked with the cruiser, and the team, led by Elias, entered through an airlock that hissed open for the first time in centuries. Inside, they found the vessels remarkably preserved, their controls dormant but intact. "We'll need to work fast," Elias instructed, splitting the crew into teams. "Power, navigation, weapons, check everything. We have to know if they can fly, and more importantly, if they can fight." The initial tests were promising. The ancient technology, though unfamiliar, was advanced for its time and surprisingly adaptable. Elias oversaw the revival of the main engines, a low rumble filling the ship as power coursed through long-dormant circuits. As the first ship's lights flickered to life, a cheer erupted among the crew, echoing through the empty corridors of the cruiser. They had done it. They had found and awakened relics of the past, a forgotten arsenal that could change the course of their struggle. Back on the Star Warden, as they prepared to return to New Haven with news of their success, Elias looked out at the assembled fleet, their metal bodies catching the light of distant stars. "Let's bring our ghosts back to life," he murmured, a plan taking shape in his mind. A plan for rebellion, for revenge, and for the restoration of a free galaxy. The return to New Haven was marked by a mix of trepidation and triumph. As the Star Warden approached the colony, Elias could see small groups gathered at the spaceport, their faces turned upward, straining for the first glimpse of the returning ship. The news of their successful mission had preceded them, transmitted ahead to prepare the colony for the monumental task that lay ahead. The atmosphere was electric, charged with a palpable sense of urgency and hope. Upon landing, Elias was met with cheers and applause, a hero's welcome that he quickly deflected to his crew. "This isn't the victory yet," he reminded the gathering crowd. "It's the beginning of our real fight." The days that followed were a flurry of activity. The ancient fleet, now confirmed to be operable, became the center of all efforts. Engineers and mechanics from across New Haven volunteered for the task of refurbishing the ships. Workshops and hangars buzzed around the clock, as people worked tirelessly, fueled by a newfound purpose. But Elias knew that hardware alone wouldn't win their war. They needed a unified force, capable of operating the fleet and standing against the might of the Empire. He began to organize training camps, using his military experience to teach tactics and command to volunteers who had never before set foot on a warship. Simultaneously, Elias reached out to other human colonies. Using encrypted communications, he shared the news of the ancient fleet and their plan to confront the Empire. The response was a wave of solidarity that rippled across the sector. Delegations from various colonies arrived in New Haven, each bringing supplies, resources, and recruits, eager to join the burgeoning rebellion. Among the arrivals was a diplomat from the Aquiline system, a cluster of colonies that had long suffered under the Empire's exploitation. "We've heard of your quest, Captain Ford," the diplomat spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of his people's suffering. "We are with you, to the end. Our people can fight, and we bring resources you will need." Elias welcomed their support, knowing that the challenge ahead required more than just one colony's effort. The ancient fleet was growing, not just in size, but in spirit, embodying the combined defiance of a repressed people ready to claim their freedom. As the preparations advanced, Elias held a council with the leaders of the Allied colonies. They gathered around a large holomap, displaying the sectors under Empire control. "This is where we stand," Elias began, pointing to strategic locations. "We hit them where it hurts: supply lines, communication hubs, outposts. We keep moving, keep them guessing." The strategy was bold, guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale, designed to disrupt and weaken the Empire's hold on the outer sectors. The Council agreed to a series of coordinated strikes, planned to commence once the fleet was fully operational. Amidst the strategic planning, a personal message arrived for Elias, encrypted and urgent. It was from an old friend, now serving in the Empire's naval command. The message was a warning. The Empire had gotten wind of a rising rebellion and was preparing a massive counterstrike. Elias read the message in silence, the weight of his friend's betrayal of the Empire to send this warning not lost on him. The news was grave, but not unexpected. Elias shared it with his command team, reinforcing the need for speed in their preparations. "We have less time than we thought," he concluded, his resolve hardening. "But we will be ready. For Leah, for all of us." In the weeks that followed, as ships were repaired and crews trained, the spirit of resistance grew stronger. New Haven transformed from a quiet frontier colony into the heart of a galactic rebellion, a beacon not of hope, but of impending revolution. Elias watched over it all, knowing each day brought them closer to war, but believing, more than ever, in the righteousness of their cause. The ancient fleet, now operational and shimmering under the cloak of space, lay in wait near an asteroid field close to the Imperial outpost on Virgus Prime. This outpost, a critical hub for the Empire's logistical operations in the sector, was the chosen target for their first major offensive. Elias stood on the bridge of the lead ship, the Star Warden, his figure casting a long shadow under the low lights, his gaze fixed on the holographic star maps flickering before him. All units report ready status, Captain, reported Lieutenant Mira, her voice a steady beacon amidst the low murmur of the bridge crew. The tension was palpable. For many, this would be their first taste of combat against the Empire's might. Elias gave a firm nod. Commence the attack. All squadrons, engage at will. The order was calm, deliberate, the culmination of weeks of planning and preparation. The fleet moved forward, slipping out from the asteroid cover with a grace that belied their ancient origins. Stealth systems, enhanced by the best engineers the rebellion could muster, kept them hidden from the outpost's sensors until they were almost upon it. The Star Warden led the assault, its first salvo of plasma fire lighting up the dark as it struck the outpost's outer defenses. The surprise was total. The Imperial forces scrambled, their return fire disorganized and ineffective against the suddenly materializing enemy ships. Tara, now a squadron leader, piloted her fighter through the chaos, her team swooping around the larger ships to target the outpost's shield generators. Focus on the generators. Without them, the station is exposed, she commanded over the squadron comlink. Explosions lit the void as the shield generators buckled under the concentrated fire, the protective barrier around the outpost flickering and failing. Elias watched from the Star Warden as the main fleet moved in, their larger guns targeting the now vulnerable station structures. Send in the boarding parties, Elias ordered, his voice cutting through the commotion of the bridge. Troops, trained for just this scenario, launched in assault shuttles, breaching the outpost's hull at key points. They met stiff resistance. The Empire's soldiers were well trained, but the surprise and ferocity of the rebel attack gave the boarders the edge they needed. Back on Star Warden, Elias kept his eyes on the tactical display, coordinating the fleet's movements and supporting the ground team's advance. Every report, every burst of static-filled communication drew a line between hope and despair in the unfolding battle. After intense fighting, the outpost's command center was breached. "We have control of the command center," came the triumphant shout over the comm, a signal that the tide had definitively turned. Elias allowed himself a brief smile. This victory would send shockwaves through the Empire. It was the first clear demonstration that the rebellion could strike at the heart of their operations and not just survive, but win. As the fleet regrouped, Elias addressed his crew, his voice echoing throughout the Star Warden. "This victory is yours. Each of you has shown that our cause is not just a dream. Today, we struck a blow for freedom. Tomorrow, we press on, for we have a galaxy to free." The return journey to New Haven was quiet, reflective, as the fleet carried with them not just the spoils of their victory, but a renewed spirit. The rebellion had truly begun, and across the galaxy, whispers of the ancient fleet's return grew louder, a harbinger of the Empire's crumbling reach. After their successful strike on the Imperial outpost, the rebellion's morale soared. News of their victory spread like wildfire, igniting hope and defiance across numerous star systems. Elias monitored the incoming reports with a cautious optimism. Each victory brought them closer to their goal, but he knew the Empire would soon respond with increased force. In the command room aboard the Star Warden, Elias convened a strategy meeting with his top officers and allied leaders. They stood around a large holotable displaying the galaxy, with various sectors blinking where rebel forces were engaging the Empire. "We need to keep up the momentum," Elias stated, pointing to the sectors. "Hit them before they can regroup. We're not just fighting to win battles, we're fighting to win minds." The following weeks were a blur of activity. Rebel cells, coordinated by Elias's command, launched guerrilla attacks on Imperial supply lines, communication relays, and outlying bases. Each operation was designed not only to weaken the Empire's infrastructure, but also to embolden the oppressed populations under Imperial control. Meanwhile, Elias faced the daunting task of maintaining unity among the diverse species and factions within the Alliance. Disputes over tactics, resource allocation, and post-war governance threatened to fracture the fragile coalition. In one heated meeting, a delegate from the Trilax Federation argued vehemently for more aggressive assaults on populated systems, a move Elias opposed to avoid civilian casualties. "We are not the Empire. We do not win by terrorizing the innocent," Elias asserted, his voice firm, cutting through the rising tensions. This stand earned him respect among many in the Alliance, solidifying his role not just as a military leader but as a principled visionary for a future galactic government. As the campaign intensified, the Star Warden became a target. The Empire, recognizing Elias's ship as the rebellion's flagship, dispatched an elite task force to eliminate him. Word of the impending attack reached Elias through his network of spies within the Empire. Prepared but heavily outnumbered, Elias devised a risky counter-ambush. Near the gas giant of Hydara, the Star Warden and a small fleet lay in wait. As the Imperial task force approached, confident in their numbers, they found themselves outmaneuvered. The rebels had turned the gas giant's volatile atmosphere to their advantage, using electromagnetic pulses generated by the planet to disable the Imperial ship's sensors. The ensuing battle was chaotic and fierce. Elias's fleet, though smaller, fought with the desperation of those who had everything to lose. The Star Warden, at the heart of the fray, sustained heavy damage, but the rebel tactics proved effective. By the battle's end, the Imperial task force was decimated, a victory that would be celebrated across the Alliance. Weary but undeterred, Elias surveyed the damage to his ship and crew. Losses were substantial, and the cost of resistance weighed heavily on him. Yet each victory brought new allies, more ships, and a greater resolve to continue the fight. As they repaired the Star Warden in the shadow of Hydara, Elias received reports of uprisings on several Imperial-controlled planets. The people, inspired by the rebellion's successes, were beginning to resist. Each uprising weakened the Empire's grip, tipping the balance of power slowly but surely. "We're turning the tide," Elias remarked to his officers as they charted their next moves. "Keep the pressure and keep faith. We're no longer just surviving, we're prevailing." With the galaxy watching, the rebellion pressed onward, each battle a step towards the dream of a free and just society. Elias knew the hardest challenges lay ahead, but he also knew that the spirit of the rebellion, kindled by the loss of one innocent life, had grown into a fire that could not be extinguished. As the rebellion gained momentum, its objectives grew bolder. The final and most audacious target was the Empire's capital planet, Centauri Prime, a fortress world surrounded by fleets and shielded by the most advanced defense systems in the galaxy. Elias knew that to truly topple the Empire, they needed to strike at its heart. In the strategy room aboard the Star Warden, now patched and battle-scarred, Elias met with his war council. Maps of Centauri Prime and its defenses covered the walls. "This is our target," he declared, pointing at the glowing hologram of the planet. "If we take Centauri Prime, we break the Empire's back." The plan was multi-phased. First, they would disable the orbital defense grid, which protected the planet from space-based attacks. Next, they would engage the Imperial fleet in orbit, drawing it away from the planet to allow ground forces to land and secure key positions. The operation commenced under the dark of a new moon cycle, when visibility was lowest, and the fleet's approach could be masked by cosmic radiation from a nearby nebula. The Star Warden led a squadron tasked with taking out the orbital defense nodes. As they neared the planet, the tension among the crew was palpable. "Orbital nodes in range," reported Terra, now commander of the fleet's vanguard. "Launching EMP torpedoes now." The torpedoes, silent and swift, arced toward the planet, their trails faint against the star-studded sky. Moments later, explosions lit the space above Centauri Prime as the torpedoes hit their targets. The orbital defenses flickered and died, a testament to the rebellion's growing sophistication in warfare. With the defenses down, the rebel fleet surged forward. The space around Centauri Prime erupted into chaos as Imperial and rebel ships clashed violently. Elias directed the battle from the Star Warden, issuing commands with calm precision. Meanwhile, the ground forces, led by a seasoned commander named Rhea, made their descent to the planet's surface. The landing was hot, met with stiff resistance from Imperial ground troops. Rhea and her forces fought through the capital's outer defenses, moving towards strategic sites including the government district and military command centers. Back in orbit, the Star Warden was locked in a fierce duel with the Imperial flagship. "Elias, we can't hold them much longer," Terra's voice crackled over the comm. Elias looked at the tactical display, weighing his options quickly. "Pull back to defensive position Gamma. Lead them into the asteroid field. Use it to our advantage." The maneuver was risky, but it worked. The Imperial ships, less nimble and less familiar with the terrain, suffered losses as they pursued the rebels into the hazardous asteroid field. On the ground, Rhea's troops secured the government district. She transmitted a victory signal to Elias, who received it amid the chaos of battle. "Centauri Prime is ours," he whispered, a mix of disbelief and relief in his voice. As the final Imperial ships either retreated or surrendered, Elias addressed his crew and the Alliance. "Today, we've achieved something extraordinary, but our work is not done. We must ensure that freedom and justice replace the tyranny we've dismantled. The victory at Centauri Prime was a decisive blow to the Empire, effectively ending its reign. But for Elias, this was not just a military triumph. It was the first step toward building a new galactic order, one based on the principles of equity and cooperation that had united so many under the banner of the rebellion. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges of governance and reconciliation, but for the first time, it was a road paved by the people of the galaxy, for the people of the galaxy. The battle for Centauri Prime marked the beginning of the end for the Galactic Empire. With its capital taken and its leaders captured or in disarray, the remnants of imperial power quickly crumbled. Across the galaxy, systems declared their allegiance to the new order that was rapidly forming from the ashes of the old regime. In the wake of victory, however, Elias found himself facing challenges he had never anticipated as a military commander. The Star Warden had been transformed from a warship to a flagship of peace as delegations from various planets arrived to discuss the future of the galaxy. Elias, once a captain in a forgotten fleet, now sat at the head of a table that would decide the fate of billions. The discussions were intense and fraught with centuries-old grievances that had been suppressed under imperial rule. "We have a chance to build something better," Elias said to the gathered leaders, his voice echoing in the assembly hall on Centauri Prime, now a place of reconciliation and rebirth. "Let's not repeat the mistakes of the past. Let's forge a government that values every species and every system equally." One by one, leaders stood to voice their support or concerns. A representative from the Tauron sectors emphasized the need for a robust defense against any future threats. An ambassador from the peaceful agrarian worlds of the Outer Rim called for guarantees that resources would be shared fairly and without the exploitation that had characterized the Empire. As the debates continued, Elias worked tirelessly, mediating disputes and forging alliances. The strain was immense, but the hope for a lasting peace and a unified galaxy drove him forward. Outside the political arena, Elias was also dealing with personal losses. Many friends and comrades had fallen in the struggle against the Empire. He visited war memorials being erected across Centauri Prime, each name a reminder of the cost of freedom. It was during these quiet moments of reflection that Elias felt the weight of leadership most acutely. After months of negotiations, the Galactic Congress was established, a body representing all member planets and species. Elias was offered the role of Chief Guardian, a position that would oversee the implementation of the Congress's policies and the maintenance of peace. However, he declined, feeling that his role was to remain a mediator, not a ruler. "I've seen too much war to be a leader in peace," Elias told the assembly. "I will serve as an advisor, but this new era should be led by those who have not been hardened by battle." Instead, a council of diverse leaders was elected, with Elias's close ally Rhea becoming one of its key members. The council promised a new beginning, committed to transparency, equality, and justice. As Elias watched the new leaders take their oaths of office, he felt a sense of accomplishment, and more profoundly, a sense of hope. The galaxy was forever changed, and while the road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, it was now lit by the collective will of its people. Elias finally returned to New Haven, the place where it all began. The colony was thriving, a hub of culture and diversity. Walking through the streets, he saw children playing, their laughter a testament to the enduring spirit of freedom. It was here, watching a new generation grow up in a galaxy that they would never have to fear, that Elias found his peace, knowing that while the shadows of the past might linger, the light of the future was in good hands.